All right. Hello, Facebook. This is Tommy Valentine. I have the pleasure of serving as executive director at the 501c3 local nonprofit called Historic Athens. We really appreciate you taking time to join us here on what is episode 6 of our program. This week is brought to you by Dan and Corey Delamater, so we really appreciate our sponsors for making this week possible. And just to let you know what you've tuned into, so we are conducting an 11-week series. During those 11 weeks, we will be interviewing 55 different community leaders from around this community, hoping to provide a cross-section of reactions and stories about what it has been like living through this historic moment. Our mission is to celebrate and conserve community heritage in Athens, Georgia. Sometimes that's a historic space or building, but right now it's preserving the stories. So at the conclusion of these 11 weeks, everything that we do here, everything that we say here live today, everything we say in these 55 episodes is going to be donated to local libraries and research institutions so that 50, 60, 100 years from now, folks can remember what it was like during these historic times. A little later in the program, I'll talk about how you might get more involved in Historic Athens if you're interested in history and if you love Athens, Georgia. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and bring on our guest. So just a quick word here. So all of our guests are tied to our community and our program in different ways. Today's guest is someone who's very important to Athens, has been very important to me personally, and that is Bob Sleppy. So Bob heads up Nuçi Space, and I can't wait to talk to him about Nuçi Space and let him put it into his own words what that incredible organization does. We're going to go ahead and bring Bob into the feed here with us, and then we will get things set up so that you can see him. So hello, Bob. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks, Tommy. How are you doing?
Navigating. Navigating. That's what I'm doing. How are you doing? Navigating as well?
Good.
Sure. Okay. So,
yeah,
Bob,
just pushing through,
Yeah, it is truly the type of era where you just say one day at a time, right? I mean, I think that's the idea. But Bob, I want to jump right into this because you're well known to a lot of people in the community, as is Nuçi Space. But there may be people tuning in who aren't familiar with your mission. There may be people who are reviewing this decades from now. And so I want to make sure we start on the right context by getting a better sense of who Bob Sleppy is, and getting a better sense of what Nuçi Space is. So can you tell us a little bit about your work with the community?
Sure. Let's see. I'm the executive director of Nuçi Space, as you've already told everyone. We were created in memory of a guy named Nuçi Phillips. He was diagnosed with clinical depression when he was a junior in high school, and he was fortunate that he had parents that helped him navigate that diagnosis and gave him the care and treatment he needed. Unfortunately, it was something that he had a hard time managing with medication, and it's just one of those diseases that it just treatment didn't work well for him. And about 5 years after he was diagnosed, when he was a senior here at the University of Georgia, he took his own life. In the wake of that, Linda Phillips, Nuçi's mom, had an idea one day, a couple years after his passing, and she thought, what could I do to help Nuçi's friends and fellow musicians, and where could I fill a need? And she came up with the idea for Nuçi Space. She told me she was running on a treadmill, and it kind of popped into her head. And if you're familiar with Linda at all, you know that once she has her mind set on something, you pretty much should just get out of the way.
Right.
You either help her or get out of the way. And so she started calling all the people she knew and gave them ideas for, shared her idea of what she wanted to do. And it probably wasn't, 6 months later, they started looking at buildings here in Athens, and That's kind of how it started, as far as organization goes. And we have, of course, grown over the years. He passed away in November of 1996, and Nuçi Space opened its doors actually in September of 2000. And so we've been around about 20 years.
Wow. Well, I mean, time goes by incredibly fast. I've said on this program before, anyone that knows me knows that everything I learned that enables me to do nonprofit, I learned from the music scene. But one of my first real introductions to the music scene was Nuçi Space that September. I mean, there was a band at our high school called Math Head, and they were the first. Everyone,
I remember.
Yeah. But everyone, most people have some memory of their friends who either started rapping or were in a band, or, so whoever the first people they knew that made music that made you realize, like, oh, I can make music too. And that's what drew me into Nuçi Space. As you and I have talked about, as I started grappling with depression, just like most creatives, having a space that destigmatized seeking mental health care, finding a counselor, expressing yourself, those were incredibly important things for me. I know that they were incredibly important things for so many musicians that Nuçi Space has served. Now my job is to think about historic things, and I know that my organization has given y'all awards before for the building you ended up choosing. Do I realize, Bob, I'll have to plead ignorance here. I don't really know what that building was before. Do you know what the history of the space is?
Yeah, it's actually a cool little story. I'll try not to take up too much of the time, but when Linda and her friends were looking for buildings, they came across this building that had been vacant for probably 15 years. It was a Cardi Electric motor repair shop. And, like I said, no one had been in there for probably 15 years, but it just so happened that Linda put an offer in on that building. And in the exact same week, someone else put a bid on that. There hadn't been bids on it ever before. And so two bids now. And apparently the other bid was much, much higher. I think they wanted to put a gas station or something there.
Sure.
And Linda actually went and talked to Mr. Cardi, set up an appointment to go meet with him, or the realtor did. And she told him her idea and what she wanted to do. And he was really fond of the building because he built it with his sons. And Mr. Cardi was sick at the time. And I think he and Linda got along so well, he ended up selling the building to Linda rather than the other higher bid. And It was significantly higher bid because he really liked what she was going to do with it. So, he passed away about 6 months after that meeting.
Wow.
And had he not done that, it would have gone to an estate, and it surely would have probably sold for, whatever the highest bid was. But he had a major impact on Nuçi Space being where it is.
Well, I first of all, I just want to share this. Deborah Gonzalez just dropped a comment in to say such an inspiring origin story of Nuçi Space, transforming a tragedy into a helping hand for so many. Thanks, Bob. And we appreciate Deborah. Yeah, thank you, Deborah. For those of you that haven't seen many episodes of this program yet, you should go back to last week. Deborah Gonzalez was one of our guests, and really stunning episode thanks to her on exploration of grief in this difficult time. Bob, I think the reason that led me to ask that question is that so often in historic preservation, we talk about a sense of place, that buildings and the way we use them can give a community a sense of place. And so I just think, as someone who grew up on the East Side, as you're about to hit that big hill to go into downtown, it's almost like Nuçi Space is the first gate. It's it's the first thing you see when you really start feeling like you're downtown. And thanks for sharing that story with us, because it is so easy to imagine it in an alternate reality, just being a gas station or something like that, you know? So
We go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, please.
I was just going to say, that part of town is just chock full of history. I think that's one of the reasons I love it so much. The building right behind Nucci Space, which is vacant right now, it was built in 1892.
Wow.
The church that is no longer there, but the steeple is there, which a
Yeah.
lot of people are familiar with, was built in 1872. At one point, that was sort of like the center of the town because it was close to the river. You have Carv's Hill, where a lot of wealthy Athenians, I think, lived. And then the social work is now. A lot of workers at the mill and other industries lived along the river. I was told that that's kind of where the poorer workers from the factories were there. A few feet away is where Bat-Right baseball bat company was. That's where the multimodal center was.
Wow.
There used to be two bat manufacturers in the country. That was Louisville Slugger and Bat-Right. That's it's hard to believe that size was here in Athens, and I just love that part of town. It's really inspiring, and being so close to the river, I think it's a neat place to think about how things have changed over time.
Yeah. Well, in hindsight, it should have been pretty clear that it had a auto mechanics history, because it's been a boon to be able to roll up that door that clearly
Oh yeah.
feels like that. A couple comments here. Laura Taylor said Nucci Space has helped so many of us. Big thanks to Bob and Leslie. And Maureen just dropped in to say Nucci Space saved my life. No shame, just help. Thank you. And I agree.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
I agree with that sentiment. So Bob, as you know, as we talked about before we went on air, we're going to be dedicating a lot of time on this program to how coronavirus has changed things for you and for Nucci Space. But I don't want to leave this introductory section without getting a full picture. So Nucci Space does a lot of things. And once you've been there so much sense, you wonder how every music town in America manages to get by without an equivalent of Nucci Space. But I think for the first timer walking into Nucci Space, you go through a variety of emotions as you realize everything that happens there. Can you walk us through what Nucci Space does, top to bottom?
I will try to hit on as many things as I can, because we've grown and adapted over time. The one thing that has stayed constant, though, is that it was always a safe space. That was the whole entire intent.
All right, hello. We are live again here, and this is going to end up being part 2 of the feed. We just had a technical difficulty from the Facebook end of things, but we're going to keep this interview going. And so I hope all of you that were watching the previous stream can find their way in to join purposes. We will be combining the feed. But if you wanted to hear the part of the interview that came before this, just go back into our videos section, and you should be able to find Bob's earlier remarks about Nucci Space and what it does. Bob, when we were disconnected, you were making an important point about
I was just saying
about seeing people's backs when you're when you're trying to say, how are you doing?
Well, and also, that Nucci Space just becomes what each person needs it to be. So, like I was saying when we got cut off, for some people it could just be like the Chamber of Commerce, where you're a musician, you just moved to town, and you want to know what venues there are and who to talk to and how do I find other musicians and that sort of thing. We could be also, if somebody needs counseling services, to be there for that, or a support group. We have AA meetings there. We have survivors of suicide meetings there, resources. You could be there to just grab a cup of coffee. And some people treat it as, your friend's, kitchen, where everybody just congregates and, BS is about whatever is happening in the world at that time. So Some people becomes whatever you need it to become. Um, and but it's all rooted in those things I was talking about before. It's of, care for one another and compassion and listening. No matter what you're doing there, that's the foundation of we build everything off of. I think that's one of the reasons why we've been successful. We've never treated it as Nuçi space belonging to anyone. We've treated Nuçi space as belonging to everyone. And our job is to be stewards of that space. And so, days look different. Someone knock on our door that had a really bad night that just needed to be around other people, and we spend most of the day, just being with them and just making sure that they have a safe space to be. We've had bands come in there and record videos. We've had, but yeah, I think the main thing is that we just look out for one another. We kind of build this foundation of, we look out for one another, we care for one another, and we truly want to build relationships, and, I think that's one of the reasons why the counseling aspect of Nuçi Space works so well is you and I know each other well enough to where if I bumped into you a few times, I would know if you're not feeling well.
Right.
And if we try to build those relationships with everybody, that could, I want our staff to work the same way you would with your friends, of just going, hey, what's up? Something seems to be bothering you, and ram our services and, down your throat or anything. But I always like to joke that, we're as subtle as you can be with a 14-foot picture of Nuçi on the wall.
Right.
It's, people, we want people to know why we're there, but, it's, that they know they can come to us and we don't have to go searching for them because, our job is just to be available.
Right.
I hope that answers the question that you asked, because
it sure does, Bob. Bob, I'm going to ask you to stand by for 1 second. I just want to make sure that everything looks okay from our audience's end. But
okay.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay, great. All right. So, Bob, when we left off, we were describing some of the services that Nuçi Space provides for the community. Could you kind of go back through, just kind of break down the services for our viewers?
Sure. Well, our reason for being and, why Nuçi Space is there is our counseling program. The way that works is that we work with different providers, professional counseling counselors and psychiatrists, and we try to provide those services for folks that don't have access to them, and then help pay those bills. That's the main thing that we do. We also have some support groups and that meet regularly at Nuçi Space. We also have a partnership with the UGA Medical School. They will come by about twice a month to see uninsured musicians and folks in our community. And I think one of the reasons why sometimes it's hard to explain, we do some things that are, we do a lot of different things. So we have 4 rehearsal spaces at Nuçi Space. So that's when people come in on a regular basis and rehearse at the space. We just built on a recording studio through some donations. We call Amplify. One of our most successful programs, it's not really new anymore, but we started in 2007. It's called Camp Amped, and it's basically a camp for kids 11 to 17. And it's really grown into be an amazing program. A lot of the bands that people go out and see today were actually some Camp Amped alumni. So, yeah, we do a wide variety of things.
So Bob, yeah, as we transition here into this current situation we're dealing with COVID-19, walk us through, I guess let's start with a chronology. So so many of our guests, we've talked about, UGA, Clark County School District spring break is when this anvil kind of dropped on everybody. How did this come down on Nuçi Space? How did Nuçi Space navigate their early days of all of this?
It was kind of interesting. I was actually going to a conference in Washington, D.C., and it was basically a lot of organizations that work with musicians in a variety of different contexts. And we were all kind of meeting for, I wouldn't say the first time, but one of the very rare times we get together. And I actually drove because getting a plane ticket was so expensive. So this was the very beginning of March. And we had a great meeting and finished out with a lot of excitement, and then ended up driving back home. And I actually took some days off. I went up to North Georgia mountains just to get out of town. And then the thing that really rattled me and woke me up to how serious this is when South by Southwest decided to cancel their festival. I do not envy the people that had to make that decision, because it's a multi-million-dollar event that comes to Austin, Texas every year. It's huge. And they did the right thing, obviously. But at the time, I'm sure everybody questioned, what they were doing. So a lot of credit, I think, goes to them for waking up the venues and the musicians and everybody. Because I knew people that were literally on stage and told that they had to vacate the premises.
Wow.
Because they were closing all the clubs. So it was, I think South by Southwest is the thing that really woke me up. And I think a lot of my fellow musicians kind of woke up that day. And, I think we were fortunate here in Athens that, our leaders took it as seriously as they should have, because, as we know now, there's people still walking around like nothing's changed.
Right.
So yeah, just deciding like, hey, we need to do our part and shut down. And at first we didn't know how long it was going to be. And, our kids were pulled out of school. We were first told it'll be probably March 29th, and then we soon realized there was no way they're going back on March 29th.
Right.
And they eventually made decisions and kept on rolling out. I think the hardest part is the uncertainty of when do we kind of get this together, because, I think Dr. Fauci, I think it's pronounced, is, he said it best when, the virus is the one that dictates the time frame.
Right.
So that's kind of what we're doing. We at some point need to kind of open things back up, but we have to do it in a way that's responsible and that we're looking out for the people that could really be affected by this. So yeah, it wasn't a hard decision. It was just like, we needed to, once you get the facts, you're like, oh, okay, this is something we need to navigate. So
in part one of this live interview, I mentioned that, I'm somebody who personally felt the benefit of Nuçi Space when it comes to mental health. I also know that large events like this, let alone unprecedented events like this, but they can be such a tremendous trigger for people in our community. And we've seen ripples of that throughout our community, sometimes in really tragic ways recently, but also just in ways that are right below the surface. The population you serve is no doubt more in need of you than ever. How do you deal with that emotion or that duty while having to maintain social distancing?
Well, yeah, it's completely foreign to every single thing that we've been trying to do for 20 years. It is literally the exact opposite of what we try to do. So, in making that decision, the first thing we did was Leslie, our counseling advocate, got on the phone with our healthcare providers and asked them what their plan was, because first we wanted to take care of our current clients and people that were seeing professionals and make sure they had access to that support system. The next hardest thing was like, how are we going to deal with new intakes? And at the time it was like, well, we can wait for new intakes because, most providers want to see people in person before they do that. But now the time has passed. I think they're having to do that through, telehealth or telephones and that sort of thing. And so we're just trying to adapt. We did our first survivors of suicide meeting online through teleconferencing software. We actually have a Zoom meeting every day at 2:00 that people can join. And Leslie, our counseling advocate, or some other staff members will be there just to kind of,
Oh, wow.
if you're stuck at home by yourself, you can go hang out with Leslie and just have somebody there. We're working on some other programs too, like that people can just have some interactions. It's, we're also, we're calling our the bands that rehearse there, partially because, we want to make sure they come back when this is all over, but actually more so, they're our friends and we want to call them and say, hey, are you doing okay? I think that's the thing I really want to impress upon people now is that, we have all the time in the world to make these telephone calls, even if you pick like 3 people a day, just to really reach out and go, hey, Tommy, how you doing? I have absolutely no reason to call you other than I want to know you're okay. And you'd go, yeah, I'm doing good. Had a bad day last Thursday, but I think I'm doing better, and just to maintain those relationships, it's, and they don't have to be these big, heavy things, just kind of like checking in with one another. Because the thing that sucks about depression is that you self-isolate.
Right.
Everything that we're doing now is feeding into this idea of like, I'm not going to reach out for help. First of all, because this disease tells me I'm not really worth talking to,
Right.
And so to have somebody, call me and just say, hey, how's it going? It's an indicator for me like, oh, okay. Yeah. It kind of, snaps me into this place of like, oh, I need to not listen to my brain that's trying to hurt me.
Right.
So yeah, we're just trying to do our best to continue to maintain relationships and build new relationships, and trying to use this new platform to do that. I think if you asked all of us, one of the things I think we would all miss the most is just being able to hug somebody.
Right.
So and to be able to look into somebody's eyes and tell them it's going to be okay. The video stuff is great, but it's definitely a challenge. And then just the uncertainty, if somebody told us like everything's going to be back to normal on July 1st and, and that's fact, that's the way it's going to be. Most people could adapt, but it goes from March 16th to March 29th to April 15th to, and then, possibly the end of May. And, we get through May and somebody says, nah, it's probably going to be more like June,
Right.
And, and then, that's just everyday folks, so many of us in Athens are entrepreneurs. They built businesses. And, I look at somebody like, Seth Hendershot at Hendershots, and man, I'm just blown away that his ability to, not only take care of himself and his staff, but like he goes online and cracks me up every time, by just putting on little shows of him empty space, you know,
Right.
and, you know, because, you know, not to get too personal here, but I'll be honest with you. It's, you know, the first couple of weeks of us being closed down, I just stayed at work. The first week, somebody else was there. The second week, I was by myself. And the second week, I just imploded. You know, it was
Right.
hard. It's like something that I've spent, I mean, I've been in Nuçi space for over 20 years. And to watch something that you've built crumble, and be on the verge of not opening again, it's like that's really hard to, um, you know, let that process. You know, I had to get out of thinking towards the future because of that uncertainty.
Right.
I just kind of take every day now of like, okay, this is what we're doing today. So it's a tough place to be in, but um, you know, I think if we rely on each other and overcome this distancing that is kind of put upon us and figure out new ways to be closer with people, that's the way out of this. So.
Yeah, I've been doing some reading recently, not surprisingly, historic reading, and I was reading this account of this World War I soldier, and he was talking about the guys who made it mentally and the guys who didn't. And he was saying that the guys who didn't make it were the ones that were always saying, "Oh, it'll be over by 4th of July. Oh, you know what? It'll be over by Thanksgiving. Oh, it'll be over by Christmas." And they said the key was to maintain hope that it was going to be over. But if you're just constantly reaching for these deadlines, you know, it can drive you crazy. Um, I know that that uncertainty has been hard on everyone I've talked to. It seems to be consistently difficult for everyone, just not knowing what's next, almost waiting for the adults to show up with the answer when there might, you know, as you said with Dr. Fauci, the virus is the only one that might have the answer. Um, you know, Bob, when you talk about crumbling around you in Nucci space, you know, what it would be like if there wasn't a Nucci space, my mind immediately slams to the opposite, which is when you reopen or when shelter in place is lifted, there are going to be so many people, so many musicians, especially those that relied on the work from the food and beverage industry. I feel like you're going to have more clients than you've ever had. Like there'll be more of a need for Nucci space than ever. Have y'all had conversations like that behind the scenes? Are you ready for a rolling tide to come in? What do you think about when you think about the future these days?
Yeah, I definitely haven't given up. I'm not a quitter, nor do the people that I've hired. They're not quitting either. So, um, so that's not something I'm scared of. It's when I'm isolated and alone, and my
Yeah,
brain has this disease, and it tells me like it's not going to work. Um,
right.
but um, but when I'm healthy, you know, I have a tremendous amount of faith, not just in Nucci space, but in our entire city. Um, um, we're we are survivors and we're innovators. I mean, um, so many people just started doing what needed to be done because that's who they are. And um, you know, when I start to think of the, you know, reopening Nucci space, you know, obviously my first goal is to make sure we protect everybody that's there. So um, you know, we'll be changing uh, our processing and how we people come and use the space. I mean, we've had those conversations. So um, possibly putting some time in between each band so we uh, uh, have time to clean
Yeah.
each room. We also we're going to purchase enough mics to where no one sings in somebody else's mic. So we'll get a day's worth of mics and then disinfect them overnight and put a
Mm.
new batch into circulation. Um, and you know, we're gonna work with everybody that utilizes the space to make it safe for everybody. That's comes back to what I was saying before about, you know, that it doesn't belong to anybody; it belongs to all of us. So we're going to listen to the people that we serve. And, if I'm sure they want to feel protected, and we're going to do everything to make sure that's the case. So there's been lots of conversations about, what it's going to look like when we come back and how quickly we're going to do that. We may not do it as quickly as some others. And then the other side of that is, we have camps that we have to protect those kids. If we decide to go through with camp, we have to think about that. I lost my train of thought, but yeah, I think we're just trying to, do our best to make sure that we're, I remember it now. What I was going to say, when we do come back, the people that, spend their money at Nuçi Space are the ones that haven't had jobs for, 2 months.
Right.
So, we have to think about, okay, well, I don't want to make that even harder for them, to come back. So how do we subsidize some of that? How do we, how do we build that community? Because I have no doubt, as things stabilize, the support will be there, but we need to take care of the community. That's even how the Gary Vereen Fund started, was that, we weren't even thinking about raising money for Nuçi Space, because we were just seeing people that were having a hard time buying groceries. And we all thought, we'll take care of these people first, and then we'll get to that point where we can start taking care of ourselves.
So, Bob, I want to talk about that fund in just a moment here. I want to break in real quick to say we're going to ask, just for everyone watching, we have about 15 more minutes left in this broadcast with Bob, and we really appreciate the time he's making for us. I do want to jump in with two quick things. Jeremy Field dropped in with a question. He says, I've always enjoyed the Camp Amped band at the 40 Watt with the Drive-By Truckers. I know they provide some proceeds from the show. Have you been getting some decent donations from groups like this during this time? And Bob, I know that you have support from lots of different groups, like several prominent voices in the music world. How are donations going? And for our viewers, how can our viewers help through their own donations?
Well, I'll answer the last question first. Is that, you can always go to our website. There's donation buttons on our website, which is Nuçi, nuci.org. You can go to our Facebook page. There's trying to think of it. Those are probably the two most common ways, but you can also email us if you want to use Venmo or something like that. And like, my email address is bob@nuci.org. But as far as other donations go, to be honest with you, we really haven't done a whole lot of asking or fundraising at Nuçi Space. And it hasn't felt appropriate yet, because we were fortunate enough to have a little bit of a reserve. So, if we can make it to the end of May, the other thing that I'm really proud of is that we've been able to keep all of our staff employed through all of this. We'll, most of my concern is for the small businesses around town that, are young or don't have that kind of reserve, and also the employees that work for cash. I basically put a fundraiser up on Facebook on I want to say like the 19th of March, which was like a Thursday. And I basically said, this is what we want to do with the fund. We want this money to not come to Nuçi Space. We want to put it in the hands of people that can go buy groceries. And the first thing I did was call our accountant and go, like, how can we do that? What is the legal aspect of this? And so we put all those things in place. And in about 3 days, we raised about $10,000.
Wow.
And because there's no shortage of people that care and want to do good. And then I think AppFest Educates heard about this fund, and they matched it. They gave us $10,000, and
Wow.
they also had to make a tough decision about for AppFest. And from there, we've had the Riverview Foundation help us. We've continued to raise money through Facebook and our website. And actually, as of this morning, we have over 300 people that have applied for money. We have raised and distributed $89,000.
Wow.
In 30 days. And because we knew that folks could not wait 5 weeks to buy groceries or pay their rent or things like that, and quickness was our main ally, that we had to, somebody sent a request. We put together a small committee that was independent of Nuçi Space so they could be looked at it objectively. And they gave us recommendations. I look at it, I write the check and send it out. And, we were sending, between $10,000 and $13,000 every 2 days, just trying to get money out into people's hands. And it's something that I'm very proud of, and Nuçi Space is very proud of. And, I don't know how much longer we can do it. I'm hoping that stimulus checks and unemployment and all that stuff starts kicking in. But, there's just, and you talk about bigger bands and donations, it's like they're shut down too. It's like their revenue source is gone as well. They probably have bigger cushions than the band that drives around in a van.
Right.
But still, the truckers were on like the second date of their tour when it got shut down. I mean, that's how those guys live. Wow. And then our biggest fundraiser is Athens Business Rocks, which happens in May. We decided to shut that down for obvious reasons. So we'll just figure out different ways. It's, you and I were discussing this off camera, but I mean, it's an interesting time to be the leader of a nonprofit organization,
Right.
because you're being we're being tested. And it's not easy, but it also is a great reminder of like why you get up and do this work every day.
Right.
Because, especially when you become an executive director, you start dealing more with like paying bills and employees and all that kind of stuff. And you get further and further away from the people that you actually help. But the fact that I can actually read, a letter from somebody asking for help and be able to write a check, and have that personal connection is like that has helped me kind of get back to center of like why I've been doing this for over 20 years, because I love working in this community. I love being around these people.
Bob, I'm going to share this with from Deborah Gonzalez. I know that she shared on part one, but she just, in response to some of the things you were saying, said that she wanted to thank you for sharing your struggle. We always need to know that we're not alone, especially now. And so, I just want to say, I know that every nonprofit executive director that I'm talking to is going through what you just described. Everyone who is has depression or anxiety is going through many of the things that you've described: self-isolation, avoidance, all the effects that comes with that. So we want to appreciate your candor. We are going to transition here in just a moment to a series of questions that we've been asking each of our guests for posterity. Before I do that, just very briefly, I want to show some gratitude to some of the folks that are keeping us going. So I'm just going to do this very briefly. First of all, these are our annual sponsors, and we do want to say thank you so much to them. Their generosity earlier in the year has kept us going throughout this difficult period of time. And so you can see the names there of our sponsors. If you are interested in becoming a sponsor now, or just having a discussion about becoming one in the future, you can email me. That's Tommy@historicathens.com, or you can just visit historicathens.com. I also want to tell you that in addition to these folks, we're very fortunate to have a couple hundred folks locally that support us as members. Membership starts for as little as $5 a month. And those memberships really matter. They allow us to educate, advocate, provide services through our Hands on Athens initiative. They allow us to operate the Athens Welcome Center. All of that support helps us try to create a community that understands itself through history and knows where it's going by understanding where it's been. So if you have a chance to visit historicathens.com, we'd appreciate it. At times like these, especially, every dollar counts. So we do appreciate that. Bob, switching back to our discussion here. So I'm going to transition here to what I think is a bit of a lighter question, but it's one that we've been asking each of our guests. So part of the Athens lifestyle is consuming things, food, concerts, just life, and our park system, the Greenway, just going out and experiencing those things. And right now, the restrictions we have in place are preventing that. Every dollar I can spend that I can afford to spend in between groceries, I'm trying to spend in the local small business community. But, as I've admitted on this program before, the first day shelter in place starts to lift, my top priority is an all-star special at Waffle House. I just really want an all-star special at Waffle House. And ask each of our guests, what are things that you miss? What are things that you can't wait for life to get back to some form of normal so that you can enjoy again? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Well, it's funny. There are things that I didn't realize that I missed until they weren't there. So just I think I took for granted being able to see my staff every day, and interacting with them and the people that come into the space, and this Nuçi space feeling alive with people. I joked with somebody the other day, I would even be willing to listen to just an entire day of people practicing taking care of business, and every rose has its thorn, and maybe even a Nickelback cover band. I could deal with that if people were just back in the space. Yeah, I mean, like going to home aid with my family. I think because I can't go makes it, I want to go even more now. And just, little things, just being able to like walk around in Lowe's and look at all the stuff I can't afford to get by,
Right.
Just a window shop. They're pretty small things that I miss, but it sounds cheesy and hokey, but I think most people understand it's like just hugging somebody you haven't seen in a long time.
Right.
That's hard because it's an instinctual thing, It's like if you and I saw each other, first thing I'd do is give you a hug.
That's right.
And
that's that I think that you're putting your finger on something here, which is one of the reasons so many people love Athens is, on any given day you can walk through downtown and run into and hug 5 friends. And even if you've only lived here for 2 years, 3 years, it's one of the reasons why so many people joke that they planned on coming here for 4 years and now they've lived here the rest of their life, is that's an addictive quality. And to not have that and to not have any certainty on when we get that back is tough.
I think there's also a really interesting thing with living in, I think of Athens as a small town, is longer you live here, you also learn this great skill of being invisible when you need to be invisible. Mm-hmm. So, I've been at the grocery store and not and I didn't want to talk to anybody. But you can, people that have been here a long time can look at you and go like, yeah, he doesn't want to be.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to talk about Nuçi space today, and I think that's one of the things I love about the town is people understanding like those days where, you want to have that contact, and other days I just want to buy my gallon of milk and go home.
Right.
So.
Yeah, you can exude it. Well, one of the benefits I find, and I don't know if this is true with you or not, but being in the Shaved Head Club is if I just put on a ball hat, it's immediately I get left alone.
Well, yours is by choice, isn't it though?
Yeah, well, less and less, but yes. So Bob, one other question we've been asking is, so in the historic preservation world, one of the discussions I keep hearing is that when you come out of a recession, or any kind of life-changing, economy-altering situation, a lot of times what you see is historic sites become more endangered than ever, because people are so eager to see growth and change and economic development, that you see a lot of unrestricted commercial development, a lot of important spaces get knocked down. This tends to happen every time you come out of a recession. Yeah. And so one of the things we've been just asking every guest is, what are some historic places in Athens that really matter to you, that that you hope that decades from now, when an audience member's combing through these interviews, something that you hope is still standing? What are some historic places like that for you?
I've spent the majority of my, how long have I been here? 30 years. Yeah. Majority of my 30 years in downtown Athens. I can't even imagine Athens without that. I mean, it's a jewel. I mean, I think most communities would kill for having a downtown space like we have it. Making sure that we keep the integrity of downtown and support the businesses that are there. And, one of the things that really kind of broke my heart is when they moved the art and the music school away from downtown.
Yeah.
Because people would take breaks and come downtown, and people would have art studios and rehearsal spaces and things like that downtown. And, now that it's on the other side of campus, you don't have as much of that as we once did. But, I, as a history buff, I love anything that can tell a story. That's like I mentioned earlier, the building behind us that was built in 1892. It's, I love kind of digging into that, and, the church that was there. I love, there's some really funny stories about the church that I love sharing when people come visit. Because, REM's participation in church is just kind of one little part of a long history. And I think also Athens as a whole has a respect for history in general, that I appreciate that being in the town, sharing the space with other people that care about the history. I love walking down the Greenway and reading the signs about this is, this bridge used to belong to this railroad, and, it would take the cotton from here to there and that sort of thing. It's like, I love how it's all kind of interconnected. And the old mill where the school social work is, I think it's all those things are so special. And not to mention, I'm not even bringing up the university, but the university has some really great buildings. Even though I've never been in the Tanner building where they used to sell art supplies when I was in college. So I love all that space, like downtown in particular. Like I know one day it'll happen, but I can't even fathom downtown without Wuxtry. It's like, I can't wait to go, spend way too much money on vinyl records when I get done with all this.
Yeah, I've been thinking the same about Wuxtree and Bizarro Wuxtree. I just want to go support them in person. Bob, our closing question we've been asking each guest is this: 50, 60 years from now, when folks look back, future generations look back, what would you like them to know about Athens in this moment?
Oh, man, about the people here. I mean, that's, I think, the reason why most of us stay here. You can look at it from so many different angles. One, if you want to look at it from a political angle, we're this little, blue speck in an ocean of red, when it comes to Georgia. And we're still able to, communicate and have thoughtful debate, that you can have traditional businesses, right next door to, bars and Wuxtree and places like, that serve a completely different community of people, but we all still kind of get along. And at the end of the day, we're Athenians, and everything else doesn't really matter. And I've seen cases of that so many times, especially now in difficult times, of people just going out of their way to help a stranger. And some of that jadedness has kind of gone away. I hope we're able to hold on to that, and not so much think about our differences, but actually what makes us similar. So that's what I would like for people to remember about us, is that there's just really good people here, and people that care about one another, and not a passive type of caring, but the type of all hands on deck. We're going to make sure people are not hungry. We're going to make sure people have places to live. And I hope we hold on to that for as long as we can before our lives get too busy again. I'm kind of the belief that, sort of, when your brain can't handle things, or you lose that coping mechanism, sometimes your body will give you something else to focus on. Your back will hurt, or your feet will hurt, or something like that. And, maybe in some way, we're going through this now because there's a lesson that we need to learn. We need to slow down and pay attention to it. And I hope that we have the wherewithal, the intelligence to actually pay attention to what that lesson is, just so we don't wind up repeating it.
Yeah. So, well, I hope that hope comes to fruition. Bob, thank you for spending time with us. We really appreciate it. And we just want to say we appreciate the work you're doing. That 89,000 figure that you shared earlier, that's really something. So I know that it's hard to work and feel proud at the same time, but Athens is proud of you, and we appreciate it. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Please tune in tomorrow for episode 7 of 55. We'll be here on Facebook at 1:00. Thank you again to Bob. Thank you again to Dan and Corey Delamater for helping sponsor this week of programs. And we'll be back soon. Thanks a lot. And please stay safe and healthy. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.